The Robert Sorby RS215KT Chattertool is used to produce unique patterns and decoration on end grain work. The tool comprises a handle, shaft and a clamp assembly into which two double-ended cutters can be fixed. The first of these has a bead or rounded over end, and the opposite end has a cove shape. The second cutter has one face flat and one with a V point. The kit also includes a multi-face scraper blade. The cutters are stamped from a special grade of spring steel to allow them to flex in use, and there is no burr present on these cutters initially. This burr is important as it is the burr hooking into the wood that causes the tool to chatter and create the pattern. The burr can be formed in several different ways. Using a diamond file will produce a fine burr on the cutter. Touching lightly against a bench grinder wheel will produce a heavier burr. If doing this with the cutter held in the tool, ensure that the cutter blade is withdrawn up into the clamp to allow only a small protrusion over the edge. This will ensure that the blade does not chatter as it is applied to the spinning wheel. The only exception to this is the cove-shaped cutter. This is best sharpened using a half-round diamond file or slipstone, as it is not possible to sharpen this shape with a flat grinding wheel. With a piece of end grain timber prepared and mounted in the lathe, let's have a look at the tool in use. There are many different patterns and effects that can be produced with a Chattertool, so we can only hope to cover the basics here. The first thing that will have an effect on the pattern produced is the amount of the cutter that is allowed to protrude beyond the end of the clamp. The greater the amount of overhang, the more the tool can flex, and this will result in a heavier, more spacious pattern. Reducing the amount of overhang will minimise the amount the cutter can flex by and would normally produce a tighter, more closely spaced pattern. As a starting point, I would suggest having about 1 inch of the cutter extended. Naturally, wood can vary in density, and this can be exploited by deliberately choosing a close-grained hardwood if a very fine, delicate pattern is wanted. For most Chattertool work such as goblet bases, coasters, box lids and such like, around 1000 RPM would be a safe starting point. To begin with, it is easier to work with the tool trailing down slightly, with the burr edge of the scraper cutting on to centre height. Think of the tool as working just like a scraper. They are often used with a handle raised slightly, dropping down onto centre. Be aware that when this tool is working well, it leaves you in no doubt. The tool produces a high-pitched screeching sound when in use. Once the note reaches its highest pitch, this tells us that the maximum amount of chatter for that particular combination of wood, speed and tool cutter protrusion has been achieved. By altering the amount of cutter that is allowed to protrude, we can change the pattern. Increasing the length of the cutter allows the tool to flex to a larger amount and produces a slightly heavier pattern. Only having a small amount extended will produce a much finer, closer spaced pattern. Another method of changing the appearance is to alter the height that the cutting edge is presented to the work at. When working directly onto centre height, as we have done so far, the pattern formed will appear to run out radially from the centre. By working with the cutter either above or below centre height, the pattern changes and now seems to run out from the centre at an angle. By alternating the height, a herringbone type effect can be produced. Each cutter has the option of 2 different shaped cutter tips. The pointed cutter can be used to chatter into a V-cut, or can be used on its side using 1/2 of the cutting edge. The other cutters produce a decorated cove or a bead. With the bead forming tip, it can be an advantage to place a small groove at the start point of where the Chattertool will be. By placing one of the outer points of the tip into this groove and pivoting the tool around, the chances of the tool wanting to skip or skate over the surface of the wood is minimised. Experiment by using different techniques to refine and highlight an area of chatterwork. In this example, wood is being removed from both the inner and outer edges of the Chattertool work band to help define and attract attention. The contrast between the plain wood and the chatterwork is enhanced, and it allows a chance to create very crisp, defined stop and start points for the patterned area. The shadow line created by raising up the pattern band also helps to draw attention and create interest. As another option, why not consider creating a small band of chatterwork and then part it away to produce a small patterned insert. This could then be inlaid easily into a contrasting wood. Finally, in addition to the versatile chatter cutters, this tool is supplied with a multi-face scraper blade, ideal for shear scraping smaller items.